So you pressed one button and not the other one.
But I have pressed both now.
Oh, I can see us. There we
That's
are.
us.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Mr. Sleek.
And I'm Sci-Fi the Poetry Guy.
Crikey, that it's like comes straight in, doesn't it? It's sort of immediate, if you like, whereas we're not.
Back in the room, yeah, slow burners, I'd say.
So how are you, Sci-Fi the Poetry Guy?
I'm all right. I'm not too bad.
Bob 12.
Bob 12. Or we were wondering, weren't we, if we're going to do the live shows as a separate entity. So this could technically be still Bob 11.
Or Bob 11A.
Bob 11A. We can make it alphanumeric. It's fun.
I think we've got a few thank yous, really, haven't we, for last week?
We do.
Which we've just about recovered from, but you've got a heavy cold, so maybe it took more out of you than we wanted, really.
As I mentioned, I got bitten by a poisonous beast at the weekend.
You did, yes.
It was my own fault. So you know, don't mess with the poison. Kids.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
No, neither do I.
So yes, I was talking about the live event that we did at Riri's Coffee House in Keighley.
Yes, indeed.
Where people turned up.
Packed crowd.
Sold out.
Yes.
Bizarre,
not
bonkers.
A chair. Not a chair.
Empty. They had to wait and go on buffets, didn't they?
They're clamouring to get inside.
I think they just came for the cake, really.
I'm sure that was part of the reason, if not most of it.
We're going to do it again, aren't we?
Yeah. I'd like to. I think it gave people a reason to come out, and that's a reason in itself, I think.
Get out, yes.
Get out of the house.
Get out of the house. We did some coffee and cake. What more could you want?
Exactly, a bit of like conversation. I did a poem about peacocks, didn't I?
You did. And then Bob Amati, he came up with Peggy Whitlanton.
Yeah, he
and
did.
we had Elena.
He was on his chair, wasn't he, the whole time? He was loving it.
And thanks to all of them, really. Very kind. Very, very kind.
Coffee here.
Oh, yes. Well, we've got product placement down here anyway.
Yeah, if you haven't noticed.
Indie Coffee Roasters.
Exactly. Coming to a cafetiere near you.
So, Sci-Fi the Poetry Guy, we're going to do the show in normal fashion this week.
We are.
And as normal, we're blind baked. You'll bring 2 squares of our slice of Battenberg.
Yeah.
And I'll bring 2. And we will shock and surprise ourselves and hopefully our audience.
Yes. That's it. So, well, I'll go first as usual, eh?
Is that all right? Yeah, you do like going first, really.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
You sort of push through the door a little bit, but I'm okay with that.
I'm a Taurus. That's what I do.
Well, us Aquarians can't care about such things.
Well, exactly. So you don't mind anyway.
Don't mind anyway.
Yeah, my first square this week, just to give people, we haven't done just to explain people, we bring 2 squares each, don't we? I bring the first 2, you bring 2, and neither of us know what squares
I
we're
thought
bringing.
we just done that.
Did we do? We didn't explain it fully, did we?
It's the Lemsip.
Yes, it is. Someday I'm a little delirious.
Oh, I am hoping you're going to get through this hour, by the way.
Yeah, no, I will. I'll be fine.
Nice.
Okay, so yeah, you don't know what I'm bringing now, and
no, not a
I
clue.
don't know what you're bringing.
Not a clue.
That's it. So my first square is babies.
Ooh, babies.
Yeah.
Oh, I've had one of them on my shoulder recently. Yeah.
Have you? Yeah, you did, didn't you?
Yeah, Charlotte's little and Harriet.
Yeah.
A little piece of joy.
Yes. Yeah, we had a baby round this afternoon. DJ Jangles, recently.
Oh,
he didn't have
lovely.
a baby, but he's become a father, and he has Tuesdays with his little girl, and he brings her over to the flat now. So if I'm there, I'll see her. And
oh, nice.
First time we were properly having a lovely interaction today. I was making her laugh. I was being
like
stupid.
2 men and a baby.
It basically is, yeah, absolutely. I'm Arnie. He's Danny DeVito. And yeah, it's great.
That's not who 3 Men and a Baby was it?
No, but it's Kindergarten Cop or something like that.
Oh, okay.
They were like the daddies, I think it was called, something like that. Someone will know.
I think it was John Travolta, Tom Selleck and somebody else, I can't remember.
Right.
But 3 Men and a Baby was sort of an early 80s film.
Yes.
Before they were born, lad.
It would have been, yeah.
So do you like babies?
I do. I think they're wonderful little things. I enjoy... I do enjoy... Well, they're little people in development, aren't they? And,
oh, God, yes.
And they're just... It's wonderful to see them. They just experience everything to the nth degree, don't they? Like, he was putting a coat on today, and she was screaming and crying. He was like, oh, proper tears. And it's like, she's having a coat put on, bless her. But, my God, it's such a painful task. And
I'm glad he's really taken to it, because a lot of men don't take to babies. It's not their job. It's not what they're supposed to be around.
No.
But I've been lucky enough to find that I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I like children. I think
Couldn't eat a whole one.
Absolutely not. Start with the ribs. No, that's terrible.
That is terrible. Yeah.
No,
so is this baby, this child of Jangles? Who's got the most hair?
Well, I think it's debatable actually. I think him just, but only because he's got more of a head. If you did it per square inch, I reckon.
What's her name?
Alice would have the more hair of the two. She'd have it over her father.
You can't say Alice without going there, can you really?
No, you can't. I'm not gonna.
No, I won't tie that. I won't tie that. Jangles, congratulations on Alice, and I'm glad you're taking to it, because I love babies.
Yeah, I'm sure he won't mind me saying he grew up. When he was in Kent, he looked after his previous partner's baby and helped. He adopted him, as it were, because the father wasn't there.
Okay.
So he has got previous form as a father. And he's great with her. He's wonderful with her.
I bet he is, actually. Yeah.
He's absolutely smitten by her. Why shouldn't he be? And he always wanted a baby girl, and he's got one.
Fantastic.
And it was great, as I say, interact with her. I just like making people laugh, especially young children, babies in particular.
Yeah. That first smile. And...
Yeah, just making them laugh. And it's such a... It's completely like... It's comedy. It's... What do you call it? It's like clowning. There's no words. They don't know what you're talking about. So you can only make them laugh with an expression and the way you say something. And I find that brilliant. It makes me realise the importance of communication through tonality and physicality.
So you're getting broody?
I've been broody for a while, yeah.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, you're coming up to that big birthday, aren't you?
I am, the big 30.
The big 30. I mean, I've been very lucky. As our bobbers probably know, or some of them know, I've got two. I've been lucky enough to be part of other kids' lives as well as my two biological kids. And with Thomas, certainly, I spent an enormous amount of time with him as a very small child. Jessica less so, but now creating that bond, that empathy, it ain't bloody easy, because they are demanding, and you get everything wrong, and you have to find your way, and you have to... It teaches you an enormous amount about yourself, and also makes everything not about you, but about this little bundle in front of you and their needs, because they're paramount. And that's quite unusual when you're not a parent, for somebody else's needs, it's absolutely important that their needs are met. Otherwise, there is serious issues going on.
Yes.
Both ends. And they are very, very demanding. Thomas, for example, was 9 months on Australian time.
Right.
So essentially, he was awake all night and asleep all day.
Wow.
Well, not quite, but it felt like that. And it's a very difficult time for parents in that regard.
It can be. The lack of sleep can be an absolute nightmare. I think a friend of mine, she had her first child about 6 months ago now, something like that, maybe less. And she was I don't know how she's sleeping now, but certainly for the first few months, never more than a few hours at a time, if that. So I was like, so the last few months you've never had more than 2 or 3 hours sleep at a time. And
no, it's true.
Yeah. And it's like, that's tough.
You exist almost in a fugue. Where it's baby, everything else. Baby, whatever. Baby, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a very difficult thing to settle into, especially nowadays when probably most parents work. And traditionally it wasn't like that. But and nowadays you also end up paying massive amounts for childcare and things like that. So having a baby is an enormous commitment, and one that is emotional, physical and financial.
Yeah, and the Western world doesn't really cater for children, does it, in a lot of ways, with the 9 to 5 working hours that people are expected to keep.
I thought you meant children's menu or something like that.
Well, I mean, we could talk about, fancy restaurants and pubs and stuff like that, alcoholic lifestyles. But yeah, I meant particularly in the work pattern that a lot of people are supposed
No.
to keep.
No, absolutely. It's a very difficult balance to hit, and one that I've every admiration for every parent that tries to do that. I didn't come to parenting until very late. I mean, I had, I got Ben as a stepson of mine. I regard very much as a stepson of mine. And also I've been involved in the lives of Adam and Ian over in Grimsby and other people.
Adam and Ian, is that the alternative
Adam and
creation story?
Ian, yes, absolutely. And the one thing that's absolutely constant is that all children, from babies to right the way through their childhood into teen years, and now Ben's 24. Ian and Adam are now in their early 30s, and although I'm not involved with them anymore, you know, I still think of those times and those formative times, because they taught me as much as perhaps I taught them.
Well, I've heard this about kids. They do teach you about yourself. I do find it interesting, that thing where you become second place in your own life, which I think is a very interesting concept, and one that I haven't come across really too much yet.
Oh, I'm glad you've enjoyed that experience, because it is an enjoyable experience. That bonding. Little Charlotte over in Airedale, I was holding for quite some time. There's a photo taken recently, and I found myself just falling back into that dad and baby thing, if you like, where you're completely, that little person's needs are completely on you for that moment.
And that vulnerability that they have.
Yeah.
I remember...
Don't let the head go, don't let the bottom go.
Well, yeah, they can't.
They're so fragile, and yet
off.
they're also so malleable, so flexible, so adaptable, even from a very early age.
And incredibly vulnerable, aren't they? I mean, they're like, I remember seeing Emma's, when forgotten her name now, Lyra was very small.
Lyra Blackway, yes.
Saw her just within a week of being born, and she's just this tiny little thing that was just sitting there, you know, eyes closed. But the amount of joy and calmness and tranquility that I felt from holding her was amazing. And it's like this amazing. Even now, she's a few months more old. Did you do the nappies? No, I haven't done them yet.
Does Jangles do the nappies?
I'm sure he does.
Oh, good lad. Good lad. It's one of life's experiences, the nappies.
Yeah.
You put so much in at the top end, and twice as much comes out at the bottom end. And I'm going to embarrass the lad now, but basically, well, no, I won't say lad. I'll say one of my two children. Every time he took the nappy off, they basically weed a fountain.
Oh yeah.
And that's especially when you've got the new clean nappy underneath. That really worked, and I felt, and every time that they did it, there was always this grin on their face that said, "Ha, done it again." So yeah, there's a lot to kids, but it's mostly about nurturing, isn't it?
Well, I guess, I'm not a father, but it's just like anybody in life, you just really, if you are thinking straight, you want to make people happy, don't you?
Yeah.
And that's the same with babies. You just want them to be loved, well fed, and happy. And that's what it boils down to, doesn't it? Really?
It is also an extraordinary experience to see what women go through as far as childbirth is concerned. I mean, that is probably, well, it's definitely the number one thing you can ever experience, the birth of of your child. Very worrying time, very stressful time, but also one that, you know, you've really got to be thankful for the women who carry a new life within them for 9 months, and then have this extraordinary experience that is terribly painful, but also I've never seen this a look that as soon as it's all over and a mother has their child in their arms, it's a look of utter belonging and an utter self-satisfaction.
Yes.
And I think when a child is born, your life then moves on. The next stage starts.
Yes.
And it's that waiting period. I watched it with Charlotte just recently. Found it very, very difficult. That last couple of weeks, where, you know, she was shattered, and Charlotte needed to come. Harriet needed to come there and then, you know, and it was such a terribly difficult time for her. And if there are any bobbers pregnant at this moment in time, our thoughts are with you. Really,
Yeah,
it's
it
an
looks
extraordinary thing that you're doing, and
so uncomfortable.
and our thoughts and our empathy is absolutely there.
Yeah.
Absolutely there. So babies,
Babies, absolutely.
pink and crinkly.
Yeah, funny little things. Unbelievably happy and bloody couldn't be more miserable at times. After
That can be a form of abuse, can't you? You cry, baby.
Yeah,
Well, babies cry.
they do. They
But
really,
also,
it's horrible, and all feeling upset is so
Yeah.
horrible.
that natural attention seeking, I want, is also something that you have to get right from day one. Otherwise, I think that nature and nurture, where your nature is essentially formed in the first 18 months of your life, and is formed with the help of nurture, that nature, if you essentially allow that extremely demanding, natural sort of survival instinct of babies to take over. You know, as soon as a baby even remotely gurgles or tear in the eye or whatever you'd said about jangles and crocodile tears, these were real tears. Parents know. And that balance, that what's best for your child and yet is also best for you so that you can get through, that's a very difficult thing. And I hope you get to experience it.
Yes, me too.
Soon, actually. You
Yeah.
feel ready.
I do, yeah. I need a couple of things need to come into place, but I would sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I wasn't ready till much later in life, and some would say I probably still aren't.
Well, I
I'm
think
not,
that's
but
the
it's
thing.
it's a difficult thing to do.
There are plenty. They say with twins, don't they, that one of them at least was unexpected. So you know, there's a lot of you can't plan for everything
No.
or be ready, but you still just got to do it anyway. Yes, but babies.
Oh, well, thanks for bringing that. It's a real positive
I
start to the
thought
show.
it's a nice one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Right, well, shall I go for my first square side
Please
by
do,
the
yes.
poetry again? Right.
Square from
I
Mrs.
can't
Lake.
quite decide which one to go with first. I tend to go on the hoof a little bit. But the one I'm going to go with first is I'm going to go with... Some of our bobbers might have seen some photos after the show last Wednesday at Riri's. And there's a couple of lovely photos where a lady called Junie Mooney comes and really gives us a hug. She really enjoyed it.
It was a lovely
and it
hug.
was a lovely hug, and they're lovely photos. They're just happy photos. And that's Junie in a tea,
She's a healer,
really.
isn't she?
She's a healer. But what she runs is an organisation, a charity. And it is the charity itself and its purpose and its recipients that I want to bring today. So I'm going to bring to Bob 12, or Bob 11A, whichever it is, I'm going to bring Mpika.
Mpika.
Now, I'll give you a bit of background. Mpika is, the charity is known as Mpika Village of Hope.
Right.
And Mpika is a place. It's Mpika.
Yes.
And it's in northern Zambia.
Right.
And it's an extraordinary story that I'd just like to give to you or to share with you. And it started in 2002. And Junie Mooney is also really called June Martin, and who is the CEO of the Mpika charity. In 2002, she met a lady, and I'm gonna just check on this one because she's called Jennifer Musakanya. And Jennifer was over here studying from Zambia, and while she was on her second visit, she found that the news was coming back from Africa and coming back from home that there was a terrible drought.
Yeah.
And she needed to help. She felt that she was thousands of miles away, and she needed to help those back home. And Junie kind of picked up on this. And then all of a sudden, next door to her, or one of the houses near to her, was a whole lot of boxes with stuff that people had just thrown away. And she thought, I can sell that, and I'll give the money to Jennifer, and she can take it back. And that was the start of the charity. And for those that you're not aware, there have been 3 outlets, but there's currently 2, of the Mpika charity shop. And from that very small act of kindness, they now have raised, from selling things that people don't want through their mill at Black Dyke Mills, the Mpika charity shop there, and their shop in Denham, they raise thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. And over the last 17 years, they built an orphanage.
Oh, fantastic.
There is no orphanage in northern Zambia, and that's an enormous area, bigger than the UK. And in that, so that area, no orphanages. So what happens to those that are caught up in famine, or their parents are not long? You don't have a long time in Zambia. Their life expectancy is much yet less. It's more dangerous. The diseases and so on. The life expectancy is much shorter. So there's more orphans, and there's nowhere for them to be. So the next stage from providing an orphanage for sort of, I believe that at the moment there's somewhere around 12 to 15 children who are being fully supported by Mpika charity shops in Denham and Queensbury.
It's wonderful.
They've also now got a school. And they also farm their own land around the school, which has actually been donated, I believe, by the Zambian government. They don't help them financially, but they allow it to happen because they know it's a wonderful thing and it's a humane thing. These orphans would probably have nowhere to go and would be in grave and peril if there wasn't Mpika there. Now, in terms of that wonderful sharing, they've now got something that they want to raise again. Because unfortunately the original buildings, they're not well built. And the original buildings need underpinning. So what they're going to do, or what they're planning to do, is rebuild the school. And this is going to cost 40 grand. So anybody who wishes to donate, or anybody who's got 40 grand, and some people have, who want to give to the most extraordinary giving charity I've come across in a long time. There's no pay in Mpika. Everybody who helps in the two charity shops, everybody who helps at the mill, they're all volunteers. And they're helping these extraordinary young people because their stories are shared too. And these kids who essentially were orphaned at a very young age, some of them are actually disabled as well. I know there's a blind child there, for example, that just wouldn't be able to cope without such an extraordinary energy going on that starts with us giving to charity shops, helping out at charity shops, and using the stuff that basically we don't need anymore.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like a wonderful charity, and I must admit I've never...
But when she gave you a hug, you could feel it, couldn't you?
Oh, she's got a lot of love.
That love.
Yeah.
For people, for the people of northern Zambia, for people all around her, and it rubs off.
Yeah, it does. I think if you can't hide what you do, I think, or how you are in life. You can pretend, but if you do good things, you'll create this high vibration or positive energy, and people will pick up on that. You can pretend to be a really charitable sort, but actually you're an investment banker or what have you.
I think an investment banker can be a very charitable sort.
Not to say that investment bankers overall are horrible people. That's something that would be a bit too broad sweeping. But
I'm not keen on them either.
Well, on the whole, they haven't invested greatly in our future.
Well, they tend to invest in themselves, don't they?
On the whole, well,
if you're an investment banker out there and you have 40,000, there is no better place for this to go. It will happen, but it'd be good if it happened sooner rather than later. But I mean, are you particularly charitable?
I think I like to think I am. I mean, I used to be more so. Yeah, I mean, when I was 16, before I used to give to charities. I gave about 30 quid a month to UNICEF, I think it was at the time. For a 16-year-old, that's quite a lot.
That's an enormous amount.
So yeah, I did. I used to work for charity fundraising things. I was working for a wage, and that's where I saw a little bit of the other side of the commercial side, if you like, or the corporate even side of
charities.
So Save the Children and many others that I find it strange, and I've done it myself, where charity fundraisers will walk around in suits and go and walk on people's knock on people's doors or approach you on the street, I find it a very bizarre thing, and it's very, I think, disconnected between what the actual reason for the charity wanting money. And I mean, to be honest, I mean, they might want to come back to me with different figures, but I've heard that Save the Children, for example, really, if you burrow down into their numbers, are actually a shipping company. And very, very little of what they raise does go to the causes that they proclaim to help so much. A huge percentage goes to either their costs as a charity or the salaries of their employees, which, as we know, you know, CEO of Oxfam or what have you.
I think Save the Children and Oxfam do enormous things, and I think they have to present themselves in a professional and corporate way in order to get, because most of their funding actually is not from donations from individuals. Most of their funding is actually picking up government contracts in order to supply certain needs. So in terms of overseas aid, overseas development and so on, you'd rather essentially give it to a charity that's well organised and is actually experienced and going to deliver.
Yeah.
And I get what you're saying about cost. Bob Geldof, the classic Live Aid lines, give us your effing money. What he was so angry about was not the fact that at that point in time in the show, if you like, they'd only raised about £1 million with all this going on, these concerts and records and so on and so forth. What he was annoyed about was that he had to do it in the first place.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I learned on the phones, ringing people. You know, I'd be fundraising for Save the Children. I know the history. I know how Save the Children started by one woman called Eglantine Jebb, raising money for...
What was her name?
Eglantine Jebb, I think, or Eglantine Jebb. And she started just after the First World War. What was happening was there was a siege around Germany. There was a naval siege, basically. We were stopping any sort of food supplies coming into already war-torn country. So essentially German and Austrian children were starving, and people knew about this. British government were doing this on purpose, and she protested on Trafalgar Square saying, this is not right, we must save the children, we must save the German children, even though this is Britain and it's just wrong, it's a humanitarian thing. She got arrested, was put up in court, and she lost her case for disturbing the peace or what have you. It's a treacherous thing. But the prosecution, the lawyer, barrister who essentially defeated her, made the first donation to Save the Children and paid her fine for her, and made, I don't know if he made an additional contribution, but he was the first person who donated. And then the charity still became something. So I think it became a wonderful thing. Yeah. But I think for me, as a young person in London, and sitting around and knowing the people that were working and on behalf of Save the Children and all the fundraisers out there, they don't, let's be honest, they're not doing it because they want to save the children. They're doing it to pay their mortgage, to pay their rent, to pay for their beer tokens, and I'm not judging them for that. But I think there's a huge amount of guilt-tripping people.
Yeah. I mean, I can absolutely say that that's not the case with Junie.
No, and I don't want to trample on that.
And in terms of Junie, charity means giving, and giving of self, and giving... And I think that's true of an awful lot of people who are paid in the charitable sector. Why shouldn't we value people who care?
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Somebody who gives a shit compared to somebody that doesn't, which one are you going to value?
Exactly. And
why should somebody have to give their whole financial future, present, past and so on, in order to do something that bloody government should be doing in the first place?
Absolutely.
I mean, most of the charitable organisations we've talked about, Save the Children, Oxfam, Junie Mooney and Mpika, they essentially are reacting to things that have been created by governments. The governments then, ironically, it's like Gaza, for example. That is utterly, utterly horrific. We provide charitable aid. Many people around the world provide charitable aid going into there. The reason why that's happening is because the Israelis, and I'm not being critical, there are lots and lots of other reasons, but somebody in Israel has actually worked out how much food per person a Gazan can actually exist on per day. And it's subsistence rations. And then they don't let anything else into Gaza except for what you can minimally survive on. That is heinous.
It's disgusting, yeah.
That's heinous.
I mean, for me, the whole thing is about the way that the monetary system in the world has been slanted towards the Western currencies, so the dollar, the pound, the euro, whatever. That's the biggest issue for me. I mean, you can work 10 hours a day in the UK, and even they get squashed by the system out here, and work 10 hours a day in Zimbabwe or Nairobi.
Absolutely.
And you ain't going to get the same amount unequal in the global scale of things, and that's where the massive inequalities come from.
Oh, massive redistribution needed. I read a statistic not so long ago, and I know how you love my statistics, but this one was that 2.5 billion people on this planet out of 7.6 billion are living in abject poverty. And that is a level that essentially means that you are subsisting at best on a day-to-day basis. 2.5 billion people. What kind of planet do we live on? Who's getting away with this when essentially 57 people, and this is actually a charity's figure, it was Oxfam's figure, who worked out that half the world's resources were now owned by, they put out a figure that it was 84 people about 10 years ago. It's now 57. Half the world's resources are owned by 57 people. And some of those 57 people, oh, they're wonderful philanthropists. Nonsense. Pay your taxes and take a proper societal view that you are not God.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Jeff Bezos this week, he's just given away, because of his divorce and his extramarital activities, the CEO of Amazon, his wife is said to be happy with her divorce settlement of $36 billion.
36
It's the largest divorce settlement. $36 billion is more GDP than 3/4 of the countries of the world. We are getting this world so very, very badly wrong.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be need for charity. There should be need for valuation of giving, of kindness, and the ability to help others. Because that's where that's what the world needs. It don't need any more billionaires. It don't need any more bastards. It needs more kind people.
It'd be interesting if we could move to a model where you're actually capped at a certain amount. Whether that would stop productivity, but if you could still cap people in the millions. Surely.
Well, we're patronising enough to give people a minimum wage.
Yeah.
Why not give them a maximum wage?
Yeah, I'd do that. I think that's fair.
And I'd even be quite happy for it to be quite high.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we've got a situation where redistribution is just absolutely and utterly required. And the same people are giving out the same things. We can't afford it. Business can't afford it. Of course you bloody can.
Absolutely. What can you afford is the question. What can you? So you can afford to have a BMW, let's not bring names into it, but a fancy car and a big house, and you can afford to eat at that restaurant, but you can't afford to give.
In terms of quantitative easing, in terms of other measures that have put money in the UK economy, and this is not a political one, 2010, it was a surprise election, and on the grounds that one party got in when they didn't expect to. And they then went on a manifesto and political ideological journey, if you like, that was largely dogmatic around austerity. People will tell you there's no money around. Nuts.
Yeah.
There is £1 trillion more in the UK economy in 2019 than there is in 2010. Who do you think's got it? The people who already had it in the first place.
I love our Mirandans, but I want to bring this back, and it's been my fault that I've brought it out away from Mpika, because even though it's the first time I've heard of it, I think it sounds like a wonderful thing, and it's one of those local charities, local things that's helping another local area.
She does tremendous things, and she's lovely.
You can get a hug from Mooney, and you'll know she's
Judy
sincere.
Mooney.
So Yeah, mate, we can put a link. I'll put a link up if you know.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll sort
There's a
that
couple
out.
of the volunteers there that are also bobbers, and I'll
Yes.
give one to Gillian as well.
Hello, Gillian.
Sidepi's going to come and have a look at the mill.
Yes, I will actually. Yeah.
Nice one. Thank you for that. So,
Yeah.
Sidepi and the Poetry Guy, what's your second square?
My second square is loneliness.
Oh,
Yes, and I think in some ways it fits very nicely with what you've been talking about. How we've created this very lonely at the top or individualistic society, and it comes up. You've brought. It's funny how this happens, but you've brought a charitable cause, and I've also brought one at the back of this one with this one, and this
synchronicity.
It is. And it's gents club, which is what I do on a Monday.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm going to stop looking after it myself, but it will continue in the next few weeks, and it has been going for years before.
Yeah, yeah.
And it helps. It allows people, elderly men in the Shipley Bingley area, or the Rose area as well, to once a week have a chance to come out if they are isolated and, dare I say it, lonely, and to be with other men and enjoy a bit of socialisation and have a chance to get out of the house. So
What's the age limit?
there is no age limit at the top. 65 plus.
I thought you were going to say I was eligible. I mean, age limits are funny things, because I'm actually eligible to be a senior golfer now.
Well, there you go.
But I'm not that I'm a golfer anymore. But it, you know, there are different age limits of different things.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I know that I mean, loneliness. Are most of these men single?
Some of them have lost their wives, and I'm finding that difficult. Some of them lost them a while ago, some of them quite recently, and they do struggle with that. Others still do have their partners, but are, regardless, feeling a bit isolated. So I think it's a real issue in our society, this feeling of loneliness. And you know, although sometimes I feel lonely in the world, other times not at all. And one of the things I really enjoy about this show, it sounds a bit, soppy, when we're doing this, I certainly do not feel lonely at all.
No, not me.
And I enjoy it for that reason, and that's something that gives me enjoyment in life. And I think having a conversation as we do is something that's been with whatever, for whatever reason, seems to be more of a difficult and unreachable thing these days, and people are forgetting how to have a conversation and forgetting the value of that. So I wanted to promote the club, because it's one of those funny things. I've said I'm leaving, so now of course the numbers are going up. But
Well, that's understandable.
yeah, absolutely. They've got their words got round, so people have suddenly started funneling in. But they could still. I know we're sure that there are men that don't have knowledge that this club exists in and around the Shipley Bingley area. So I really would like to say to anybody listening who has perhaps a grandparent or a father or whoever who may be not getting out as much as they'd like to, that there are facilities, there are options there for people to come out.
Do you think people... I mean, loneliness is something that I have to say I have suffered from in my life. And it's generally when you are not in keeping or in rhythm with the world or with the people around you, and as a result you become more introspective and introvert, and the more that happens, the less you feel that you can actually go out and do something, because you start to blame yourself.
Yes. And doubt yourself as well.
Doubt yourself, yeah, and it becomes massive self-confidence issues. And I think that those self-confidence issues often display themselves in different ways, whether it be anxiety or depression or other mental health conditions. Yeah. Whereas loneliness itself is not necessarily a mental health condition, it actually causes, or is the causation factor for a lot of the other problems that you might have mentally. And you're right, it's about that kinship with other people.
Yes.
I mean, some people get it from, they say, I'm not lonely, I've got a dog, or I've got a cat, or whatever.
Yeah.
And some people are absolutely and utterly happy on their own. I'm a bit of a loner, and I think you are too.
I do enjoy my
And
own
yet,
company.
when we're around other people, both of us are gregarious.
Yes, I enjoy other people. I think it's... my most lonely time was probably when I was in London, which, you know, is a classic lonely place. And, yeah, that... You do miss... I think it's familiarity and sharing of problems and realising that, you know, you're not on your own in terms of having difficulties in life. I think that's one of the most important things about speaking with others, because it's not that anybody else can help you with your problems, but knowing that other people is suffering in one way, it sounds a bit sadistic, but I think it can make... I think the more...
I've been down to where you do your gents club, and I know that, having spoken to them down there, that they actually quite like you. And they do value what you've done down there. I mean, Rachel actually has an idea at the moment where you could have supper clubs and so on. We might look to bring the two groups together, and I know Rachel wants to help them sort of with their lifestyle and cooking choices and so on.
Sounds great.
Through healthy growth initiatives. So that we will need to have a chat with that afterwards.
Yeah.
Tie that together perhaps. But loneliness is is something that is not able to be evaluated or reasoned. And there's no doubt that once you become lonely, the more lonely you are, the more you cut yourself off. And the more you cut yourself off, the more you become insular and entrenched.
Yeah.
What somebody who's lonely and is not getting from a lot of interaction with other people, and certainly also other people who have some understanding of who they are and where they come from, because you can be culturally adrift as well, or age-related adrift. And in those circumstances, you don't have... Your learning stops, because you can't... So many people live vicariously from television or radio.
Yeah.
And they listen to other people's views. And one thing that I know that we want to do and try to do is just to open up a conversation.
Yes.
So I think it's really pertinent that you brought loneliness into it.
Yeah. Well, I think people... I mean, there might be some people who listen to this now that are feeling lonely, and this is a way of them of having a conversation vicariously. And if they can have that, then that's fantastic. I know I've listened to the radio, and that's been my friend previously, like in London. And...
me too.
I think, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. But yeah, I think...
Do you think you get a bit sort of... it's quite interesting, isn't it? Some people really choose to be on their own.
Yeah.
And some people feel that they're better on their own. But I feel that that's probably because they're not necessarily gelling with the right people around them or in the right relationships or whatever. But
I was in Brazil... when I went to Brazil, that was another time when I felt unbelievably lonely in life, and it was a very physical loneliness. I think that's where I realised that the globalisation of the world, this like international pull that we have, it's not all great, and it's not as integrational as people might think, because what I realised when I was over there was that I actually have nobody around me for thousands of miles that I've known for more than a few weeks or a month or so. I've got nobody. And I don't know the language, I don't know the culture, and you can be lonely in that way as well. It's, if everything's unfamiliar, then that's a huge amount of loneliness. And I think we talk about the food kind of stuff that Rach is doing. And again, that breeds into loneliness. If you're cooking for one all the time, you usually
don't cook for one.
You just eat crap. But the communal aspect of having somebody to cook for, suddenly you're eating better.
The classic ping meals.
Yes. Or learning something new. You know, you can't argue
cooking
with yourself,
together.
can you?
I've been doing some cooking down at Healthy Growth on a Friday with a couple of the chaps that come in, learning life skills and so on. And it's highly enjoyable. Doing something with somebody.
Yeah.
And preparing a meal is one of the basic human tasks, chores, if you like. And yet, how many people do it with other people?
Yeah.
And cooking together and doing things together. There's no doubt that that gives that empathy, it gives that feel that you are part of something.
Yeah.
And certainly my loneliness in life is much improved by not just BoB, but by doing things with others. I struggle to do things on my own, and I think a lot of people do. And I'm a great believer that doing things together or as part of a team is the way forward for most of the human condition.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it's healthier.
Yeah, I think there's different kinds of people, as you say, but on the whole, a lot of people are pack animals, or we aren't. There's a lot in us that thrives on community. We're not tigers. We're not, we're not sloths or whatever. We are social animals, or we could potentially. I don't know what this technological revolution is going to do if we're still in this game and it goes further and further over the next 1,000 million years. Maybe we will become more used to being alone, and that's how we'll evolve. But I think there's a lot of ingrained stuff in us right now that craves that touch and that conversation and that teamwork.
There's a fear as well, isn't there, about integration and the unknown, and any person that is in front of you. You never know until you start talking to them, until you start getting to know them, whether or not you really do like them, or whether or not they have something to give or something to teach. Trust, or just enjoyment, having a laugh.
Yeah.
Like we do on a Sunday night, having a bit of banter, going a bit crazy.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's good for you. You've got to get out and about if you can, and it doesn't have to cost a fortune either.
No, absolutely not. It shouldn't do. And I think for the introverts out there as well, not everyone is a good character. Sometimes I'm quite happy to sit somewhere and not say anything and just enjoy listening to another person have a conversation, but still know that people are around. And I think just because you're not, quote unquote, the life and soul of the party, doesn't mean that there's still that you wouldn't be welcome in a place that has people around. And if people just want to sit alone, sit with people but not say much,
go and volunteer with Junie at the mill.
Yeah,
do something.
Or come down to one of our shows, if we do another one,
Yeah.
You don't have to come and say anything, just sit there and listen. But
you'll get cake.
Exactly, there's cake you're going to say. Bloody hell, what more do you want?
You'll get
cake and coffee, that's
cake
two.
And
that's
coffee.
2 plugs.
2 plugs?
I do poetry, by the way, that's my gig.
Oh, well, I've not even come up with a dad joke this week yet.
You haven't actually? There's not been a single strike, no.
This time.
You know what I've been thinking about this week, and I am ready to pull the plug. If you do get to that 3 limit, I will stop us recording.
Will you?
I will, yeah.
Right, shall I bring my second square then, Soundfinder, to go?
Yes, please.
Shall I do that?
Yeah.
Oh, it's another of my idols. Another of my idols. I brought 2 people this time, 2 extraordinary women, Junie Mooney, and probably, I'm going to say this, probably the greatest famous person, living person that I've met ever.
Yeah.
And she is, or she was, christened Caris. And she is Welsh, although not many people would see her as Welsh.
Yeah.
And she was born in 1969. And she was born Caris Davina Grey-Thompson.
Well, she's definitely Welsh, isn't she?
And she was a very small baby.
Really?
With spina bifida. She was born with spina bifida. And as a result, her family called her Tanni, which became Tanni. And I was extraordinarily lucky. Tanni Grey-Thompson. Baroness, no less. Tanni Grey-Thompson. And I just wanted to bring Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson because I was lucky enough to be part of a small group of people who were able to do a question and answer session with her at the Federation of Small Businesses conference about 3 or 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
And she'd recently been made a Baroness, and she refused to be called Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson. She said, my name is Tanni. And she sat there, and she's very, very small.
Yeah.
And she sat there in a chair, and she explained about her life. And it was a life that started with a struggle and a fight, and is still a struggle and a fight every single day from now on and all the way through.
Yeah.
And she's basically 49 years old now.
Right.
And in that 49 years, bloody hell has she fit some stuff in. This is somebody who essentially, the 1960 spina bifida catastrophe disaster, which affected many babies in the womb because of the medication that their mothers were taking. Nobody really knew how to react to it. And kids who were disabled didn't go through the mainstream. But her dad and her mum made sure that she did. And she struggled.
Bifida, for people that don't know,
It's
a spinal thing when the spine doesn't zip up properly, isn't it? When in the womb.
That's right. That's right. Yes. But she started. She got her first wheelchair. I think she didn't get it initially by any stretch of the imagination. She wanted to do everything that normal kids did, if you like. The kids who were around her. Not normal, because what's normal? She started doing wheelchair athletics. And in 1988, as a sort of fey 19-year-old, she went all the way to Seoul, to the Paralympics in Seoul, and she took part in an event. She took part in the 400 metres. And she got bronze. And that sparked her ambitions, sparked her possibilities, and she saw that actually she could be really top class at this. And over the next 16 years, 4 Olympiads, in Barcelona 92, 4 golds. Not just at the 400, but at 100, 200, 400 and 800.
She smashed it, basically.
She smashed it. 96 Atlanta, another gold. Sydney 2000, another 4 golds. And even Athens 2004, she then got another gold. 4 other silvers. And while she's doing this, she's graduated as a BA honours student, Masters in Politics and Social Administration.
Right.
She's also then decided that she doesn't want to just be an athlete, she wants to be an ambassador for the Paralympics. She wants people to bring that understanding that everything is possible. We've got an organisation in Bradford called IMAS that gets this, and it's the International Mixed Ability Sports, Mark Goodwin and Chico, Martina. And essentially, they understand that sport and living is about everybody. It's not just about, Usain Bolt can probably beat Tanni Grey-Thompson even in a wheelchair over 100 metres. It's not about that.
No, it's not, is it?
Her classification, because of spina bifida and wheelchair usage, is T53. There are lots and lots and lots and lots of categories where non-able-bodied people can actually compete against each other and become the best in the world. Where she has been great is not just in transcending her own disabilities and actually managing to create such an extraordinary legacy of sporting achievement, but also her work for others, her work on society to understand what it means to be disabled and working to include.
It's amazing, isn't it, those people with that grit and determination in life. They are an absolute inspiration. You're right, it doesn't matter how fast she does it, it's the fact that she's where she's come from, isn't it, essentially. I watched a documentary about spina bifida, and it was presented by this actress who's in EastEnders, I believe, now, and she's got spina bifida. She's always absolutely set on being an actress. She wanted that more than anything, and she's achieved that. And she went over to the United States, where there's new treatment now that's quite remarkable, really. They're doing surgery in the womb to these kids with spina bifida to sort the spine out before they're even born.
Oh, that's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary, and it's working as well because she interviewed.
Now, spina bifida was something that I've kind of I've seen quite a few times in my life, and it was very much a sort of time capsule of mistakes, if you like, that caused this. And probably has been one of the things that's led to an enormous proliferation of drugs testing and so on, so that they now say a drug can't get on the market for 10 years. To some degree, the reasons and the justifications for that fall back into that period of time. Yeah. I'd just like to bring another extraordinary thing about Tanni Grey-Thompson, or Baroness, because I feel that she deserves that moniker.
Yeah, the last little bit about the lady. She met one of these teenagers now who should have had spina bifida and all the troubles getting up in the morning and the pain and the inability to just walk properly. Come out the womb and is now a very healthy basketball playing kid. And there was quite a moment there where she was met this child, and you could see that she could have, if she'd have been born 20 years, 30 years later, that could have been her. And she was very humble about it, and there was so much potential there for hatred and jealousy, and why have I had to go through this, and now they've got it scot-free, sort of thing.
Dear. Yeah.
And it is amazing, people with disabilities, isn't it? The way they have, there's so much that we take for
granted. Someone like Tanni Grey-Thompson would see everything as an opportunity. It's not that she don't get pissed off that she can't do certain things. She does.
Yeah.
But she finds a way to get through them. And she's transcended the Paralympics. She's transcended sport, because she's now in the House of Lords, and she advises on all sorts of issues. And it would have been the easiest thing in the world, if you like, to tie herself up politically. And she hasn't. She sits as an independent. And there is a large group of independents in the House of Lords that do extraordinary work in terms of disability awareness, in terms of disability access, inclusion, and so on. And for me, for her to essentially, the way in which her titles have gone, if you like, is that she got an MBE in 1993. That was then advanced to an OBE in 2000 on a sporting achievements largely only. She then, because she did so much work outside and was such a role model, became a Dame Commander in 2005, which I think is one of the highest levels of damehood, if you like. And in 2010 till now, she's now the Baroness Grey-Thompson of Eaglescliffe of County Durham. But to give an idea of how she transcended that sport and how she came into the national psyche, you know the Sports Personality of the Year thing?
Yeah.
In 2000, she actually came third. And that was way, 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 way back before Paralympics really was in people's psyche as a massive event. And I think London 2012, which I went to the Paralympics in 2012, was a massive sea change in understanding. But she's been doing this for 20, 30 years. And the work that she's carried out has made an enormous, enormous difference in terms of access, in terms of inclusion, in terms of disabled or non-able-bodied people or people with physical difficulties, and assimilating their skills, their understanding, and valuing what they achieve. Because it's just as valid as anything you achieve or I achieve. And I think that's what the Paralympics has done. It's not about clapping because, oh, wow, they're doing well for what they've got or whatever. It's about understanding that these are people who are achieving to the best of their possible ability. And that's what she's done. And to finish behind in the sports personality, Steve Redcliffe, 5-time Olympian, 5 gold medals. Yeah, okay, fair enough, Steve Redcliffe got it. And he's turned into, he is a good egg. Denise Lewis, the heptathlon champion, she came second. It was an Olympic year. But for her to come third was just, I remember it then. And what I will always remember about Tanni Grey-Thompson is her sitting in a chair in front of me. I was probably sat twice as far away from us. And she looks right through you. She looks right into your soul. She is an extraordinary individual. She is utterly transparent, utterly fair, you feel, utterly well-meaning, utterly determined, and somebody, you know that question, if you had a dinner party and you were going to invite 3 people.
Right.
I'm going to urge everybody who ever answers that question to say Tanni Grey-Thompson, because she's an extraordinary woman and certainly an inspiration to me, but more importantly to millions of others around the world. And fair play to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Right.
Are we about it?
I think we're about it. I even didn't lose my paper this time. Do you remember last time when I was doing that?
On your squares, didn't you?
Senior moment. Senior moment. So, Sci-Fi the Poetry Guy.
Mr.
4
Sleek.
squares make a slice.
They do.
And
we need to do our jingle again, don't we?
Go on then, you lead.
Oh God, I can't even remember it. This is the
You
problem.
wrote it.
I know. I'll give it a go. Right, it'll go. 2 squares a piece, 4 squares a slice. It's free to listen at half the price. It doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. The
Brothers of Battenberg
will show you the world. Oh, I don't like it outside.
Sci-Fi the Poetry Guide. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure,
Nice
as
one.
always.
Okay.
Good stuff. Pretty much bob on an hour, that.
Do the other one as well.
Oh, hang on.